he cared that much. And I think if you don't care, then you can take the kind of chances that can consolidate your position.
Did you care about acting?
Probably not.
Hollywood was shocked when Paul Newman's daughter finally told her story. Paul Newman was called the most perfect man in the world. But what she said will make you think twice. Does the glamorous public image show who he really was? Drinking, secret relationships with men, and Paul Newman being away from his wife and children all the time, all show a very different picture from the perfect father everyone thought he was. "He was my father," she said with emotion in her voice, "but he's also my worst childhood memory. What secrets are hidden in the Newman Woodward home?" Let's find out the story that shook Hollywood. In the video below, when Robert Redford died on September 16, 2025, at his home in Sundance, Utah, at age 89, Hollywood went quiet. The news spread fast and shocked fans everywhere. But people didn't just focus on the death of this movie legend. His funeral, especially why Nell Newman, Paul Newman's daughter, didn't show up, caused a big stir in the media. Reporters quickly asked why Nell didn't come, and only sent a message of remembrance. In her rare comments, she talked about sweet memories of the long friendship between her father and Redford. Their bond was built through classic movies like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and The Sting. But this seemingly perfect story had questions no one could answer. If Redford cared for Newman and stayed with him in his last years, why did the Newman family stay away from the funeral and only send a message from far away? Many ideas came up, from respecting Redford's privacy to hidden tensions between the two families. Still, the mystery stays unsolved, making fans even more curious. Finally, because of public pressure, Nell Newman spoke up. What she said shocked Hollywood. In her heart, she had once hated Redford. She believed he took her father away, destroyed the family's peace, and left wounds that were hard to heal. To everyone else, Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward were the perfect example of Hollywood's lasting love. Bright smiles on the red carpet, perfect chemistry on screen, and the rare image of a happy family. But behind that shine was another world: loneliness, secrets, and silent fights inside their big Connecticut home. Nell Newman told for the first time a completely different picture of family life. More than 50 years after Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid came out in 1969, the story between Paul Newman and Robert Redford slowly came out. It all started in 1968, when Paul, a top star, had the power to pick his co-star. Even though the studio wanted a safer choice for ticket sales, Paul insisted on Redford, a young actor who wasn't well known. Many people say Newman saw Redford's talent, but Harriet Foreman, his close assistant for over 30 years, said, "From the very first meeting, the way Paul looked at Robert wasn't like an older actor looking at a younger one. It was curious. It was fascinated. During filming, the two men often went away from the crew. They walked for hours through Utah's red rock valleys. They sat on the porch of a temporary wooden house, quietly watching the faraway pine forests. One crew member accidentally heard them talking about life if no one is watching. Harriet later called this phrase a symbol for something they never dared show. This close relationship went on for decades, but stayed hidden. No one dared to confirm anything. For the Newman family, especially the children, it was never something to talk about. Nell Newman, the youngest daughter, said her father had a wooden box in the library that no one could open. After he died, Nell opened it. She found handwritten letters, with no dates or names. They all started with the word Bob. "My father loved Robert," she said. He never said it out loud, but we all knew. Nell remembered one letter she secretly read when she was 17. "We act so well, Bob, acting so much that life itself feels like a role. If only we dared to live honestly with each other, even for one day." Paul's secret trips to California, supposedly to visit friends or look for film locations, were actually visits to Redford's private ranch in Santa Monica. "Every time my father came back," Nell said, "he was different, relieved, as if a weight had been lifted." The longtime gardener at the Newman home in Connecticut, Joseph Pirelli also remembered Redford's surprise visits. One summer afternoon, he said, the two of them sat under the oak tree at the back of the house. No one spoke for nearly half an hour. Paul laid his hand on Robert's. Not a handshake, not a pat on the shoulder, just a gentle touch. But I stood 10 meters away and could feel an unusual closeness, almost beyond ordinary friendship. In Hollywood, rumors about the two legends' relationship never stopped. After the Sting's success in 1973, when Newman and Redford went to the Oscars together, a veteran New Yorker journalist wrote, "They stood side by side like a married couple who had been together for a long time." The way Paul fixed Robert's collar, then smiled. It wasn't any standard show of movie masculinity at the time. It was something very human, very real. Behind-the-scenes photos often showed Paul looking at Robert with a quiet gaze, not admiration for his work, but longing, something unspoken. Many people guessed, but at that time, a public same-sex relationship could destroy careers. Both chose silence, protecting each other with distance, but that bond didn't stop at the screen. It came into the Newman home, creating a hard childhood for Nell and her siblings. She described those years as walking through a castle full of light, but empty, long hallways with echoing footsteps, and no one to greet them. Boring dinners, warm chairs, but the father who should have sat beside their mother was gone somewhere else, maybe at another house, where Redford waited for him. Weekends were always hard. Newman often left early, driving to Redford's ranch, spending the day in endless talk, forgetting lunch. Nell remembered a typical evening. Dad would drive to Utah like it was a private sanctuary. We stayed home, handled dinner, laundry, and chores, while he lived in another world. No mother, no us, only Redford and endless conversations. Small details stayed in Nell's memory. The afternoon sun coming through the kitchen window, her mother standing alone, drying her hands on a cloth, eyes empty, while her father, the man she still called Dad, seemed to have disappeared from their world. At night, if Newman came back, he appeared quietly in his silver-tinged suit, eyes tired, but sparkling with excitement from Hollywood adventures. Nell and her siblings learned to comfort themselves to sleep, eat dinner in silence, and turn the feeling of being abandoned into routine. Joanne Woodward, strong and hardworking, had to manage the whole household and care for the children. Nell remembered her mother standing in the kitchen, busy with pots and pans, her face showing tiredness but determination. Sometimes she would look out the window, hoping for a miracle to bring her husband home, a miracle that rarely came. The house was filled with light and laughter from cameras, but dark corners held silence and unheard sighs. The bond between Newman and Redford was like a strange light, tearing through the family warmth. Nell remembered her mother's attempts to pull her father back to family life, but Newman's eyes stayed fixed on another world, where adventures, laughter, and Hollywood secrets took over. Nell realized that the perfect family image on magazine covers was just a thin shell, hiding emptiness and loneliness. Even at home, Newman was rarely truly there. Afternoons passed quietly with only the sound of turning pages, ticking clocks, and small footsteps on the wooden floor. His absence wasn't only physical, but also emotional. Dinners lacked laughter, jokes, and the simple guidance any parent gives. Nell and her siblings took care of each other, comforting their mother in silence. Tears fell on the tablecloth, where their father would never see. Nell's childhood was filled with small but haunting details, from the car her father drove away in during early mornings, to family photos showing an empty chair where he should have sat. Every moment reminded her that being a great star didn't mean being a perfect father. In Paul Newman's final years, the legendary actor faced not only work pressure and a complicated relationship with Robert Redford, but also fell into alcohol addiction. This condition made his health worse quickly, and turned the big Connecticut home into a place of constant tension and unease. Nell, the eldest daughter, described her childhood as living in a grand castle covered by darkness, where her father's sudden anger could explode without warning. Alcohol seemed like Newman's escape from family responsibility and life's pressures. On weekends, he often disappeared, driving to Redford's ranch or outside events, leaving his wife and children alone to handle everything themselves. Every time he came home drunk, he became hard to control, ready to attack anyone in his way. Nell remembered that even the smallest thing could set off his anger, forcing the children to be careful with every word and step. The drinking led to constant bad moods. Nell remembered her father yelling at the children for small mistakes, or just because he was in a bad mood. More dangerous, when drunk, he sometimes threatened violence toward his wife and children. This forced Joanne Woodward to stay alert and protect them, while dealing with loneliness and helplessness. Nell talked about the long nights spent in silence, learning to avoid and protect themselves from their father's rage. As her mother struggled to keep the household going, gatherings with Redford, instead of bringing joy, became chances for Newman to drink too much, lasting the whole day. Every return home left lasting results: fear, emotional wounds, and silent scars in the children's hearts. The relationship between parents and children broke more and more, as love and care gave way to anxiety and loneliness. These experiences also explain why the Newman family didn't go to Redford's funeral. Even though Redford had cared for her father devotedly in his final years, the emotional wounds stayed. Nell once said, "We learned that friendship can be wonderful, but it can't replace family. Redford was with my father, but not with us." That's a truth I've had to live with for many years. After Paul Newman died in 2008, public attention focused on the death of a Hollywood legend, but inside the family, hidden tensions continued. According to many sources, his children were somewhat distant from him in his final years. Another problem was Newman's own foundation, where Paul Newman had placed complete trust and strict control. At first, each daughter was to receive $400,000 every year to support charitable funds of their choice. But after Newman's death, this amount was cut in half, and their control was greatly limited. This change immediately caused conflict. Nell and Susan Newman sued the foundation in 2022. They claimed that reducing the funds and limiting control went against their father's wishes. They said certain people took advantage of Newman's declining health to interfere with the will and take power within the charitable foundation. The deeper reason is believed to be the distant relationship between Newman and his children in his final years. He spent much of his time with Redford, fell into alcohol, became irritable, and ignored his family, leaving the children feeling disconnected. Their father's coldness and absence created a defensive wall in the children, leading to their determination to claim fair rights from the estate. Nell and Susan claimed they had been denied proper management of their father's wishes. They asked for $1.6 million to be returned for charitable funds of their choosing. This lawsuit shocked Hollywood. So what was Paul Newman's life like? And how did his friendship with Redford grow so deep? Paul Newman was born on January 26, 1925, in Cleveland Heights, Ohio. He grew up in a middle-class Jewish family. His father owned a sporting goods store, and his mother was a passionate Slovak woman. However, his childhood was far from peaceful. He was bullied for being Jewish and called mean names. Newman carried deep insecurities. He admitted in his memoirs that he blocked out his childhood memories to hide the pain. But within that darkness, the stage's light called to him. At 7, young Paul played the court jester in Robin Hood. By 10, he was performing at the Cleveland Playhouse, where his love for acting began to grow. After World War II, where Newman served in the U.S. Navy, he went to school at Kenyon College and Yale School of Drama. Then, he headed to New York to conquer the Broadway stage. There, he met Jackie White, his first wife, and had 3 children. But that marriage ended when Newman met Joanne Woodward on the set of The Long Hot Summer in 1958. His relationship with Woodward, lasting 50 years, was not only Hollywood's most beautiful love story, but also an emotional anchor for his career. Newman regretted betraying Jackie, calling it a lifelong pain. But with Woodward, he built a family of 3 daughters and a private life in Westport, Connecticut, away from the spotlight. Newman's acting career was a journey from failure to greatness. His first movie, The Silver Chalice in 1954, was a disaster and nearly made him quit acting. But his role as boxer Rocky Graziano in Somebody Up There Likes Me in 1956 changed everything. With his anti-hero style, charming, intelligent, but flawed, Newman won over audiences in Cat on a Hot Tin Roof in 1958, The Hustler in 1961, and Cool Hand Luke in 1967. The line, "What we've got here is failure to communicate," from Cool Hand Luke became a cultural icon, showing a rebel against the system. Working with Robert Redford in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid in 1969, and The Sting in 1973, brought him business success, making hundreds of millions and earning an Oscar for Best Picture for The Sting. Newman wasn't just an actor. He also tried directing with Rachel in 1968, earning an Oscar nomination for Woodward. He continued with Sometimes a Great Notion in 1971. He returned as Eddie Felson in The Color of Money in 1986, winning Best Actor after 7 earlier nominations. This was a well-deserved recognition for his lasting talent. In his later years, he shined in The Verdict in 1982, Nobody's Fool in 1994, and Road to Perdition in 2002, showing range from alcoholic lawyers to mob bosses. Yet Newman stayed humble, saying his success was more about luck and looks than actual talent. Beyond film, Newman was a passionate race car driver, starting in 1972 and achieving many wins in SCCA and 24 Hours of Lemons. He founded Newman Racing, won 8 national championships, and appeared in the documentary Winning in 1969. Racing wasn't just a hobby, but a way for Newman to face inner insecurities. Having struggled with alcohol addiction until age 40, his daring on the track matched the strong spirit of the characters he played. In his personal life, Newman married actress Jacqueline "Jackie" White in 1949 and had 3 children, Scott, Susan, and Stephanie. While bringing family joy, the marriage became a burden when he met Joanne Woodward on the set of The Long Hot Summer. He divorced Jackie in 1957, a decision that haunted him for life. He wrote in his memoir, "I betrayed Jackie, and it's a pain that never goes away." The romance with Joanne Woodward, sparked by a look on set, became one of Hollywood's most beautiful love stories. They married on January 29, 1958 in Las Vegas, and stayed together for 50 years until Newman's death. The couple had 3 daughters, Eleanor, Nell, Melissa, and Claire. Not only partners in life, Newman and Woodward were creative partners, appearing together in films like Paris Blues in 1961 and Mr. and Mrs. Bridge in 1990. Newman directed Woodward in Rachel in 1968, earning her an Oscar nomination. They chose to live in Westport, Connecticut, away from Hollywood's spotlight, building a private but warm family life. Newman once joked, "Why go out for a hamburger when I have a steak at home?" This was a tribute to Woodward, though he admitted he wasn't always the perfect husband. Newman's greatest legacy wasn't his awards. Despite an Oscar, 3 Golden Globes, a BAFTA, and many honors from Cannes and Berlin, but his charity work. In 1982, he founded Newman's Own, turning salad dressing into charitable funds. He donated over $600 million to seriously ill children through the Hole in the Wall Gang camp. After his son Scott died in 1978 from drug abuse, he created the Scott Newman Center to fight drugs. A Democrat, Newman supported environmental causes and opposed the Vietnam War. He was a man of talent and compassion. Throughout his life, Newman owned and lived in several memorable properties. Each told a part of his story. One of his most remarkable properties was a penthouse on prestigious Fifth Avenue, next to Central Park in New York. The apartment was about 3,000 square feet with pre-war classic design, high ceilings, a wood-burning fireplace, and herringbone floors that kept the elegance of an old era. What made it truly special were 2 private terraces totaling over 2,300 square feet, where Newman would watch the sunset over the Onassis Reservoir and the park's lush greenery. The apartment was listed for sale in 2025 at nearly $10 million, but sold for over $14 million. This showed not just its location, but the history and emotions inside. Not stopping in New York, Newman and Woodward also once lived in a colonial revival-style mansion in Beverly Hills, California. This had been the family home during the early years of their careers. The house, built in 1937, is nearly 400 square meters on a plot of over 4,000 square meters. The interior has the warmth of an artist's family, from the vintage fireplace and gleaming wooden floors to the large windows opening onto a lush garden. Outside, there's a swimming pool, a bocce court, gardens, and complete privacy in the heart of Hollywood. Recently, the house was listed for rent at $45,000 per month, not only for its size, but because it once held the presence of two movie legends. However, the place where Paul Newman felt the deepest connection and long-term attachment was the peaceful countryside of Westport, Connecticut, where he raised his children, developed charitable activities, and lived like an ordinary community member. The property, covering over 4 hectares on North Avenue in Westport, was home to his family for decades. Here, Newman didn't need glamour. He drove an old car, shopped at the local market, tended the garden, and joined community events like any other resident. The estate included 3 houses, 2 barns, a large lawn, and a wooden bridge over the Aspetuck Brook. It was a peaceful farm for a soul seeking rest. For Newman, the home wasn't just a place to live, but a place to breathe, live, and love. He once shared, "I'm not looking for a castle. I just need a place where I can be myself." His houses didn't show off wealth, but contained emotional depth. This is where he wrote love letters to his wife, raised his children, and thought of great charitable ideas such as the Newman's Own food brand, which has donated over $500 million to community funds. On September 26, 2008, at age 83, at his private home in Westport, Connecticut, he died after battling lung cancer. In his final months, despite having quit smoking over 20 years earlier, sources close to him said Newman had known about the illness about 18 months before his death. But he stayed optimistic, not wanting the public to worry about him. Before he died, declining health forced him to give up directing the play of Mice and Men at the Westport Country Playhouse in May 2008. Still, Newman kept a calm manner, strong spirit, and optimism, letting fans feel his strength and peace even in his final days. After his death, Newman was cremated, and his ashes were kept by the family in a private, quiet ceremony. His death was not only a huge loss to world cinema, but also an immeasurable sadness for those who admired him. He wasn't just a screen star, but also a symbol of compassion and endless passion. So what about the fate of his children? His eldest son, Scott Newman, was the product of his first marriage to Jackie Witt. Scott followed acting, appeared in several films, and worked as a stuntman. But his fate was tragic when he died in 1978 at age 28 from a drug overdose. Scott's sudden death left lasting pain in the family, and Paul Newman later founded the Scott Newman Center to honor his son and promote drug prevention. The 2 other children from the first marriage, Susan, Kendall Newman, and Stephanie Kendall, took different paths. Susan appeared in films such as Slapshot and I Wanna Hold Your Hand, while also doing charitable work. She died in 2025 at age 72, leaving a legacy tied to social and artistic contributions. Meanwhile, Stephanie Kendall kept a relatively private life, rarely appearing in public. Information about her current career is very limited. With Joanne Woodward, Paul Newman had 3 more daughters. Each continued a part of his legacy in their own way. Nell Newman, the eldest, is a biologist, environmentalist, and entrepreneur. She founded Newman's Own Organics and the Nell Newman Foundation, focusing on education, emergency relief, arts, and animal welfare. Through these activities, Nell shows a blend of her father's charitable legacy and her personal passions. Melissa Lissy Newman, the second daughter with Woodward, briefly tried the film industry with roles in Mr. and Mrs. Bridge and See How She Runs. However, she later left Hollywood to focus on charitable activities related to children and family. She chose a more private life while keeping social commitments similar to her father. Finally, Claire Newman, the youngest daughter, followed social activism more intensely than her sisters. She serves as an ambassador for the Serious Fun Children's Network, the organization founded by Paul Newman that provides free experiences for seriously ill children. Also, Claire takes part in environmental protection projects and community support, showing the inheritance of her father's determination and kindness. Although each child chose a different path, from film, business and science to social activism, all reflect the values Paul Newman cherished: dedication, compassion, and a desire to make a positive impact. The stories of his children not only show the diversity of life after Hollywood, but also show how a famous family keeps a spiritual and humanitarian legacy. The truth Nell Newman revealed not only changes the way people view Paul Newman, the perfect example of 20th century Hollywood masculinity, but also touches a deeper layer: loneliness, sacrifice, and the limits of the era. Unsent letters, gentle touches, quiet meetings, all are small pieces of a larger story we once overlooked. The lingering question is, if the times had allowed more freedom, would Paul Newman have lived a different life? A more authentic life? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for following this story. If you find this an insightful look at the people behind the glamour, subscribe to the channel to not miss other stories, the real hidden sides we will continue to reveal in the next videos.